The Michael Jackson biopic drops April 24, 2026, and director Antoine Fuqua has one shot to get this right. One chance to tell the story of the most complicated entertainer who ever lived. If the film skips these 10 moments, it doesn't matter how good Jafar Jackson's performance is, the movie will have failed. Let's break down the scenes this biopic absolutely cannot afford to miss. Scene 1 has to be Motown 25. Not just showing it, but building toward it. The film needs to capture what happened on May 16, 1983, when Michael Jackson stepped onto that stage at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium and changed performance forever. But here's what most people don't know. Michael cried backstage afterward. He was devastated because he felt like he hadn't held the toe stand long enough during the moonwalk. While the world was losing its mind over what they'd just witnessed, he was beating himself up over a perceived imperfection. The biopic needs to show Michael watching his brothers perform I Want You Back and the other Jackson 5 hits, visibly uncomfortable because he'd outgrown that version of himself. Then Berry Gordy had to convince him to perform Billie Jean solo. Michael initially resisted because he'd promised it would be a Jackson 5 reunion special, nothing more. That internal conflict, that guilt about overshadowing his family even as his solo career was exploding, has to be on screen. When he finally agreed, the preparation became obsessive. The film should show him selecting that iconic outfit, the black sequin jacket, the too short pants exposing his white socks, the single glove. Every element was deliberate. He'd been practicing the moonwalk for months, perfecting it in his bedroom, terrified it wouldn't translate on live television. His brothers thought he was crazy for worrying so much about a single performance. Then the moment itself. The camera needs to capture not just the dance but the audience reaction. Fred Astaire calling him the next day to say he was a genius. Gene Kelly doing the same. The biopic must show how that 3.5-minute performance catapulted him from famous to mythological. Without Motown 25, there is no Thriller phenomenon. There is no moonwalk becoming part of global culture. This scene is non-negotiable. The second essential scene is one the biopic will probably want to avoid because it's brutal, but it has to be there. The Pepsi commercial fire. January 27, 1984, at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. Michael was filming a commercial, the 6th take of the day. Pyrotechnics were supposed to go off behind him as he descended a staircase. Something went catastrophically wrong. The biopic needs to show the exact moment the magnesium flash bomb ignited too early, how the flames caught his hair while he continued performing for several seconds, not realizing he was on fire. The footage exists. The whole incident was captured on film. Michael kept singing and dancing even as the back of his head was burning, because he was that committed to the performance, that conditioned to push through anything. What happened next changed his entire life trajectory. The film must show him in the hospital, the 2nd and 3rd degree burns on his scalp, the beginning of his relationship with painkillers that would eventually contribute to his death 25 years later. This is where the painkiller dependency started. Not from vanity, not from addiction in the traditional sense, but from legitimate, agonizing physical trauma. The biopic should also reveal what Michael did with the settlement money. Pepsi paid him $1.5 million to resolve the incident quietly. Michael donated every single penny to found the Michael Jackson Burn Center for Children at Brotman Memorial Hospital. That detail is crucial because it shows his character, his genuine concern for helping others who'd suffered similar injuries. The Pepsi fire is the turning point where the physical toll of being Michael Jackson became undeniable. Scene 3 takes us to February 28, 1984. The 26th Annual Grammy Awards. Michael Jackson was nominated for 12 awards, the most in Grammy history at that time. The biopic must capture the magnitude of that evening, but more importantly, the pressure leading up to it. The film should show Michael watching the nominations announcement, the disbelief on his face, then the anxiety building. Quincy Jones reassuring him, his family's mixed reactions, some genuinely happy for him, others struggling with jealousy as their baby brother conquered the entire music industry. The night before the ceremony, Michael couldn't sleep. He kept running through acceptance speeches in his head, terrified of freezing up on live television. When the awards started, The biopic needs to show the escalating absurdity of it. 1 win, 2 wins, 3, 4, 5. By the time he'd won 7 for Thriller and 1 for the E.T. storybook, the ceremony had essentially become the Michael Jackson show. As the Washington Post described it, the camera should capture other artists' faces. Some genuinely thrilled for him, others visibly uncomfortable watching one person dominate so completely. The acceptance speeches themselves matter. Michael thanking his parents, particularly Catherine, while barely acknowledging Joe. The subtle dig was intentional. He thanked Quincy Jones repeatedly, understanding that their collaboration had created something unprecedented. When he won Album of the Year, becoming the 3rd youngest recipient ever behind Barbra Streisand and Stevie Wonder, the weight of that achievement should be visible on his face. But here's what the biopic absolutely must include: the aftermath. Michael alone in his hotel room, surrounded by 8 Grammy Awards, and feeling empty. He admitted later that the awards didn't bring the satisfaction he'd expected. He'd achieved what most artists dream about, and discovered that external validation couldn't fill the void inside him. That moment of profound loneliness, despite unprecedented success, is essential to understanding who he was. The 4th scene is going to be controversial, but it's necessary. The meeting with Prince about the bad duet. Summer of 1986. At Michael's Havenhurst mansion, Quincy Jones arranged the whole thing, believing that combining the 2 biggest artists of the decade on one track would break every record imaginable. The biopic should show the careful choreography of the meeting. Quincy telling Michael, "You sit there and Prince sits there so it won't look like we're ganging up on him." Prince arriving in an overcoat, carrying a mysterious white box labeled Camille, which was apparently his nickname for Michael. The box contained bizarre items, including cufflinks with Tootsie Rolls on them. Michael was genuinely scared, thinking there might be voodoo inside. Quincy wanted to keep the box, knowing Michael would throw it away. Then came the discussion about the song itself. The biopic needs to capture Prince's reaction when he heard the opening lyric, "Your butt is mine." His face going from interest to disbelief to barely suppressed laughter. The film should show him asking, directly and seriously, "Who's gonna sing that to whom? Because you sure ain't singing it to me, and I sure ain't singing it to you." Michael's embarrassment is crucial here. He'd wanted this collaboration desperately, saw it as a way to neutralize their rivalry and create something historic. Prince's rejection, delivered politely but firmly, was a blow to his ego. According to people present, Prince told them the song would be a #1 hit even without his involvement, which was both generous and a reminder that he didn't need Michael's song to maintain his own status. The aftermath matters too. The biopic should show Michael watching Wesley Snipes in the Bad video, imagining what could have been. It should reveal that Prince actually went back to his studio and re-recorded the entire song his way, making it funkier and more aligned with his style, then erased the whole thing before Michael could hear it. That detail, confirmed by Sheila E., perfectly encapsulates their competitive dynamic. Scene 5 is the most painful and necessary: the strip search. December 20th, 1993. Santa Barbara authorities had obtained a search warrant to photograph Michael's body, looking for markings that would corroborate Jordan Chandler's descriptions. The biopic cannot shy away from this humiliation. The film should show Michael's attorney trying to prevent it, arguing the search was unconstitutional, degrading, and violated his client's rights. The authorities proceeding anyway. Michael being forced to strip while police and a photographer documented every inch of his body, the vitiligo visible all over his skin, the very condition he'd been mocked for discussing publicly. What makes this scene essential is Michael's face throughout the ordeal. The actor playing him needs to convey the complete dissolution of dignity, the realization that his fame couldn't protect him from this violation. Michael later described the experience as the most humiliating of his life. The biopic must show him breaking down afterward, the psychological damage that never fully healed. The film should also reveal the outcome. The photographs didn't match Chandler's description. The markings Jordan claimed to have seen weren't there. This exculpatory evidence should have ended the case, but it didn't. The DA's office kept investigating. The media kept speculating, and Michael's reputation remained destroyed. The disconnect between evidence and public perception is crucial to understanding why he became increasingly isolated and paranoid. The sixth scene takes us backward in time, but forward in emotional importance. Michael confronting Joe Jackson about the abuse. This probably happened multiple times throughout his life, but the biopic needs to show at least one direct confrontation, likely during the Thriller era when Michael had achieved enough success to speak from a position of strength. The scene should show Michael, perhaps in his late 20s, finally articulating what Joe's discipline had done to him. The physical beatings, yes, but more importantly the psychological warfare. Being called ugly, having his appearance mocked constantly, being told he'd never amount to anything if he didn't rehearse until his feet bled. The film needs Joe's response too. The justifications, the complete inability to acknowledge wrongdoing. This confrontation is essential because it explains so much of Michael's later behavior. His plastic surgery obsession stemmed directly from Joe's cruelty about his appearance. His desperate attempts to create a childhood he'd never had, symbolized by Neverland Ranch, traced back to rehearsals and performances replacing playtime. His difficulty trusting people, his need for absolute control in the studio, his relationship patterns, all connected to those formative years of abuse. The biopic should show Catherine's reaction to this confrontation. Her silence, her inability or unwillingness to fully defend her children against her husband's methods, Michael's complicated feelings toward his mother, loving her desperately while resenting that she hadn't protected him, need to be visible in this scene. Including this relationship is important because it humanizes Michael. It shows him capable of adult romantic connection, seeking something beyond his carefully controlled public image. Lisa Marie's perspective, shared in various interviews before her passing, painted a picture of a complicated man trying desperately to be normal while the entire world made that impossible. The 10th and final essential scene is from the This Is It rehearsals. The biopic should end not with Michael's death, but with footage from his final creative work, the concerts that would never happen. The film needs to show him at the Staples Center, maybe in June 2009, just weeks before his passing, still pushing himself to perfection. The scene should capture him stopping the band mid-song because something wasn't quite right. His voice, more fragile than in earlier years but still distinctive, explaining exactly what musical adjustment he wanted. The dancers looking exhausted while Michael, thin and obviously struggling physically, demonstrated a move with precision they couldn't match despite being half his age. This final scene must show the duality of that period. On one hand, Michael was still capable of brilliance. The This Is It footage reveals moments where the old magic was absolutely present. On the other hand, he was clearly unwell. The weight loss, the exhaustion, the physical toll of preparing for 50 concerts when his body was falling apart. The biopic should show him talking to his collaborators about wanting these concerts to be perfect, to prove he could still perform at the highest level, to show his children what he'd been capable of in his prime. That desperation, that need to validate himself one more time, has to be palpable. The scene should end with Michael nailing a performance of a classic song, maybe Billie Jean or Man in the Mirror, the entire crew erupting in applause, and Michael smiling, genuinely happy for just a moment before the exhaustion returns to his face. The camera pulling back to show him alone on stage as the crew packs up equipment around him. That image of isolation despite being surrounded by people, of artistic triumph shadowed by physical decline, encapsulates the tragedy of his final chapter. The biopic doesn't need to show his death. It doesn't need to show Dr. Conrad Murray administering propofol or Michael's last moments. Ending with This Is It rehearsal footage reminds audiences of his artistry, his dedication, his humanity. It leaves viewers with the performer and creator rather than the victim. The scene should show the obsessive attention to detail. Michael recording vocals over and over, sometimes 50 takes or more, searching for the perfect delivery. Bruce Swedian, the recording engineer, using unconventional techniques like recording Michael's voice through a Shure SM7 microphone, typically used for radio rather than studio vocals. The experimentation that made Thriller sound unlike anything else. The biopic must include the moment when they knew they'd created something special. Maybe it's hearing the final mix of Billie Jean for the first time. Maybe it's the day they finish tracking all 9 songs and realize the album had no weak moments. Whatever the specific instance, the audience needs to see the recognition between Michael and Quincy that they had achieved something unprecedented. This scene also needs to acknowledge Michael's growth as a producer. He co-produced 4 tracks on Thriller, moving beyond just being a performer into controlling the entire creative process. That evolution was essential to his development as an artist, and set the stage for him to have even more control on future albums. Scene 9 requires sensitivity but cannot be ignored. Meeting and marrying Lisa Marie Presley. The biopic should show their first meeting in the mid-1970s when Michael was a teenager and Lisa Marie was a child. Then jump forward to 1993, when they reconnected as adults. Lisa Marie called Michael to offer support during the first allegations. Their friendship developed into something more during phone conversations that sometimes lasted hours. The film needs to show the genuine affection between them, contradicting the widespread belief that their relationship was purely a publicity stunt. According to Lisa Marie's own accounts before her death, she was deeply in love with Michael. He was charming, vulnerable, damaged, and unlike anyone she'd ever known. The proposal scene should be intimate, showing Michael's awkwardness and sincerity. Their secret wedding in the Dominican Republic on May 26, 1994, needs to be on screen. The confusion it caused, Lisa Marie's family's concerns, the media's immediate cynicism, but also the moments of real connection. Lisa Marie defending Michael publicly, appearing with him at the MTV Video Music Awards, that infamous kiss that looked staged but apparently wasn't. The biopic must also show where the relationship fractured. Lisa Marie wanted children. Michael wanted them too, but on his timeline. She wanted him to get clean from painkillers. He insisted he didn't have a problem. Their fundamental incompatibility became clear relatively quickly, but the genuine care they had for each other remained even after the divorce. Scene 7 is relatively recent history, but no less important, the Martin Bashir betrayal. February 2003, when Living with Neverland aired on British television. Michael had given Bashir unprecedented access for 8 months, believing the journalist would tell his story fairly. Instead, Bashir's documentary portrayed him as a deeply disturbed individual. The biopic needs to show Michael watching the broadcast, the growing horror on his face as he realized how badly he'd been manipulated. The most damaging moment was the interview about his relationships with children. Michael holding hands with Gavin Arvizo, a 13-year-old cancer survivor, while explaining that he let children sleep in his bed while he slept on the floor. The context Michael provided was edited to make the admission sound as sinister as possible. Bashir's voiceover narration contradicted things he'd said to Michael's face during filming. The documentary included footage of Bashir agreeing with Michael's explanations, then undercutting those same explanations in post-production commentary. The biopic should show Michael's team, particularly his attorney, realizing this interview would have catastrophic consequences. The aftermath is equally important. The documentary airing triggered a new investigation that led to the 2005 trial. The Arvizo family, who'd been befriended by Michael after Gavin's cancer diagnosis, became the center of molestation allegations. The biopic doesn't need to show the entire trial, but it must show how Bashir's documentary set those events in motion. What makes this scene crucial is demonstrating how Michael's desire to be understood, his need to explain himself to a world that had already made up its mind, made him vulnerable to exploitation. His judgment about who to trust had been compromised by years of isolation and yes men. Bashir's betrayal confirmed his worst fears about the media and made him even more reclusive. The 8th scene is pure artistry, creating Thriller with Quincy Jones. The biopic needs to show Michael and Quincy in Westlake recording studios, somewhere during that period between April and November 1982. The scene should capture their working relationship, which was part mentorship, part collaboration, part creative tension. Quincy pushing back when Michael wanted to include the 4-minute bass intro on Billie Jean. The two of them arguing about whether it worked, Quincy insisting it killed the song's momentum, Michael fighting to keep it, trusting his instincts. The compromise they eventually reached, shortening the intro but keeping its essence. That moment encapsulates their dynamic, mutual respect, genuine disagreement, ultimate trust in each other's judgment. These 10 scenes form the skeleton of any honest Michael Jackson biopic. They span his career from the moment that made him a solo superstar to his final creative work. They include his greatest triumph and his deepest humiliation. They show abuse survived, records shattered, collaborations that happened and collaborations that didn't. They reveal the artist, the son, the brother, the husband, the perfectionist, the damaged human being. If Antoine Fuqua and screenwriter John Logan include all 10, they'll have told a story that's honest, complicated, and worthy of their subject. If they skip even one, particularly the uncomfortable ones like the strip search or the confrontation with Joe, they'll have produced another sanitized, incomplete portrait of a man who deserves better than mythology. The Michael Jackson story isn't just about the music, though the music was transcendent. It's about the cost of that transcendence. The price one human being paid to become the king of pop, the childhood stolen, the dignity violated, the trust betrayed, the body broken, all in service of creating art that will outlive everyone involved in making it. Jafar Jackson carries an enormous burden as the person tasked with embodying his uncle. But the burden extends to everyone involved in this production. They have a responsibility to tell the truth, the whole truth, even when it's ugly or uncomfortable. Especially then. Michael Jackson's life was extraordinary, yes, but it was also cautionary. The biopic must honor both aspects. April 24th, 2026, we'll find out if they got it right. If these 10 scenes are there, executed with honesty and artistry, we might finally have the Michael Jackson film that does justice to the most complicated entertainer in history. If not, it'll be just another missed opportunity, another failure to truly see the man behind the mythology.